The most underrated psychological skill that you need to develop as a leader to be a more effective leader is one that I'm going to reveal in this video, because there are a lot of traits that we think makes an effective leader. Ask anyone. They might say charisma, they might say communication skills, they might say the ability to create a vision and inspire people to move toward it. There are many things. Think for yourself as well. When you think effective leader, what psychological trait are you imagining? There are many things, even physical traits, that we consider. Sometimes height plays a role. Apparently, if you're taller, people are more likely to follow you. Apparently, sometimes if your voice is deeper, people are more likely to follow your lead. Many traits, physical, psychological, etc. But in this video, I'm going to focus on an extremely underrated psychological trait. So this is a trait that I've seen manifest in many people in my psychotherapy practice who are leaders, because I work with lots of purpose-driven leaders, lots of change makers in my therapy practice. And I've seen this trait manifest in the most effective leaders. I've seen this trait make people very effective in leading not just their organization, but also their sports team, also their family, also their community. And so leadership is an extremely valuable skill because it plays a role in all of those domains. And this is the one psychological trait that I have seen manifest in the most effective leaders. And I've also seen it lacking in the people who aren't able to lead their family effectively, the people who aren't able to lead their sports team effectively, their organization, their team at work. Those people who are struggling to lead others are really struggling to develop this one psychological trait. And that trait is the ability to lead yourself. Now, bear with me here for a moment. Self-leadership, I think, is one of the most underrated skills in being able to be an effective leader. Because think about it. Nobody wants to follow a leader who can't lead themselves. Imagine what that looks like. Imagine if you were the follower. So just switch the roles, put yourself in the shoes of the follower. Can you imagine following a person whose life is in tatters? Can you imagine following a person who doesn't have their own home in order? Can you imagine following a person whose life you would not want to have? Many people would say, no, that's not the kind of leader that I'll buy into, that I'll put my trust into, because if they can't lead themselves, if they can't influence themselves toward a better vision for their own life, what chance does a bigger organization have, a team, a family? You want your leader to be able to lead themselves from the inside out, and you want them to be so good at leadership in their own life and with themselves, their own behavior, their own psychology, their own ways of engaging with others, their own ways of living life. You want a leader who is so authentically able to lead themselves that they emanate that energy, that they convince you to trust them so naturally, so organically, just by virtue of who they are, just by virtue of how profound and robust and effective their own self-leadership is. So what I mean by self-leadership is, well, first we actually have to understand what leadership is. So leadership in the psychological literature is defined as the ability to influence a group of people toward a shared goal. So, for example, if you're the head of an organization and the organization needs to make a profit, you need to engage your employees. You need to help them become productive and to be happy at the workplace so that they don't leave your organization. And so the leader there has to influence the behavior of everyone below them. And they have to influence the behavior of the other people who are at a level lower, who then in turn need to influence the behavior of the people on the ground doing the work. This is what it means to be a leader. You're moving people toward a shared goal. Political leaders do the same thing. If they have a certain vision for the country, a certain goal of how they'd like the country to look, that politician is responsible for inspiring people to move toward that vision, toward that goal, toward that endpoint. And so leadership is very much about having a vision for the future, knowing where you're going, and then being able to move people in that direction, being able to nudge and influence. Leadership is a skill of influence. Now, if we come to self-leadership, what that means in the context of self-leadership is that self-leadership is then to have a vision for yourself, for your own life, and then to be able to influence yourself to move toward that vision. For example, if you want a healthy life where you're taking care of your body and you have enough energy on a daily basis to be able to live life and to be present with other people and engage in activities, if that's the kind of life you want, if that's your vision, if that's where you're going, then you want to be able to influence your own behavior in that direction. And many of us can't do that. Many of us are not good self-leaders. We aren't able to establish a vision and then move toward it effectively. Most people who are trying to be healthier, to lose weight, for example, they really struggle with that. They struggle to influence their own behavior. And the thing is that if you're the kind of leader who focuses on self-leadership first, then you'll be able to understand the principles of how to change behavior from the inside out. You're not just going to try to influence everyone else around you while you can't even influence your own behavior. And this is what I help people in psychotherapy do. When someone comes to me for the first psychotherapy session, I like to establish what they want from psychotherapy. Where do they see their lives going? What would they like their lives to be like? Once I understand what they would like their lives to be like, then I can effectively help them move toward that. If I have no idea of what they want for their lives, I can't be an effective psychotherapist. So that's the first aspect of self-leadership that I help people with in my therapy practice is, what is the vision? What do you want for your life? What are we trying to move toward? Once we understand that, then I can help them influence their behavior in that direction. I can help them transform aspects of their psychology that allows them to move toward that, because there are reasons that they're not moving toward that. And I want to help them address those blocks so that they can effectively become self-leaders. I'm not physically taking them to the destination. I'm helping them lead themselves toward that destination and to understand why they have not done that up to this point. So through psychotherapy, I've developed the skill set of how to help people on this journey. And so I can share a bit of advice on those two parts. Let's start with the first part, which is creating a vision, knowing where you're going. Many people don't know where they're going. Many people are trying to survive the daily rat race. Many people are in survival mode. Oftentimes in my therapy practice, I have clients who come into the therapy practice and say that they're stressed all the time. They're tired, they're burnt out, their mood is low, they wake up with some existential dread, and they're engaging in comforts just to feel okay. They're scrolling through social media, they're playing video games, they're eating takeout even though they know they should be eating something healthier and homemade. They're self-soothing. A lot of the times there's substances involved, like alcohol. They're just trying to feel okay because of the fact that they're in this rat race. They're so stressed. Their body is in a totally stressed state, and because of that stressed state, their mood is low, they're burnt out, they're tired, they just don't have the energy to even consider what to make of their lives. I don't want that for you. And I think learning how to be an effective self-leader can help you, because if you're an effective self-leader, if you develop that skill of leading yourself, then you're going to get really good at keeping your vision in mind, knowing where you're going, understanding what your values are, understanding your own morality, the standards that you hold yourself to. Think about your own life. Have you lost contact with that? Have you lost contact with what truly matters to you? Not what's expedient, not what's pleasurable, not what's the short-term gain, but the bigger picture. Have you disconnected from that in your own life because of the day-to-day struggles? And if you have, don't be hard on yourself, because it makes sense that you would. The world is constantly trying to pull us into short-term pleasure mode. The world is constantly trying to pull us into, what's the next thing I can buy to feel complete? What's the next thing I can eat or consume to feel okay, to numb the pain a bit. But true self-leaders, people who are truly effective in leading themselves and then leading others, they don't just go for the short-term pleasure. They go for the long-term fulfillment. They go for the meaning, the purpose, the vision. They don't disconnect from that. So here's a tool from therapy to help you if you need to connect to your vision. A vision has to be inspiring. And if it's inspiring, it means it's emotive. And that's what a lot of people don't understand about creating a vision. A lot of people will think, okay, what should my vision be? And then they'll get out a journal and a pen and they'll write down some ideas and they'll consider it logically and rationally. Yeah, this would be a good vision. I guess I could move toward that. It makes sense. The problem with that is that a vision is meant to inspire you to move toward it. You want your vision to be so moonshot. You want it to be so inspiring. You want it to be so vibrant and colorful that you naturally are pulled toward it. You want the vision to be so compelling that you are attracted by it like a magnetic force. And to do that, you have to connect to your emotions. Your emotions are what gets you into motion. That's why it's called an emotion. There's movement that an emotion stirs. So you can't create your vision without tapping into your natural emotions. What lights you up? What inspires you? And so the tool from therapy I use to get in contact with that is to either remember what has inspired you in the past or to imagine what would inspire you in the future. And then to really tap into the feeling that remembering or imagining brings. So you can do that easily. For example, just right now, think of a memory, a time where you felt inspired and connected and you felt alive. You felt alive and energized and vibrant. Notice what comes to mind for you. There are many memories that could come up, but just cycle through some of them. Perhaps nothing comes immediately, but just sit with the question for a bit of time. When in my life, and the age doesn't matter by the way, but when in my life do I feel alive, vibrant, connected, inspired, energized? And then when you identify a memory, go into that memory. What was I doing at that point in time? Who was I with? Where was I? Was there something about the kind of person I was being in that moment that made it inspiring? Is there something I value that this memory is revealing to me? And then once you've done that, you'll be able to easily identify what inspires you. And you can do this with many memories. So extract what inspired you in that memory and then keep it on the table and then cycle through a few other memories. Put all of those on the table and then see if you can create a vision for your life as a self-leader, a vision for your life that pulls you toward it. Because now you have these little bubbles of emotion that you've put on the table, and you can insert those bubbles of emotion into your vision statement. And then if you've done that with a few memories, you can do that with imaginings. If you imagine your life in the future, if you imagine what your day-to-day looks like, if you imagine what you're doing on a daily basis, what lights you up? What gets you excited? Not just, I guess that would be nice. I guess I could do that. I guess it makes sense. Not that. What excites you? For me personally, it's imagining speaking about this stuff, psychological transformation, imagining speaking about this stuff to a lot of people in person and engaging with them and answering questions. That truly inspires me. If I imagine it, I get a bit tingly inside. I get a bit of those butterflies in your tummy. I feel it in my body. What's that thing for you if you imagine the future? What sort of imagery comes to mind that creates that bodily response of excitement, inspiration, enthusiasm? And then once you have a few of those images, put those on the table as well, and then insert those into your vision statement. This is how you create a vision statement. This is how you decide where you're going in life. You don't just rationally write it down. You don't just think, what would the optimized life look like according to the average person? No, that was a robot, by the way. You don't do that. You tap into your emotion through memories and through imagination. This is something we do in therapy and something you can do for yourself. Now, once you've done that, you can't skip the second part. And the second part is really where the rubber meets the road, because the second part is, how do I influence my behavior to move toward that vision? And anyone who's cared about what the state of their life is like, anyone who's cared about where their life is going, will know that this is not an easy question. How do I control my behavior? Sounds simple. It sounds straightforward. It sounds like you could just make a quick plan and initiate that. But trying to influence your behavior, your own behavior, is extremely difficult. Now, the problem is that your whole life depends on your ability to control your behavior. Your whole life depends on it. Your health is at stake when it comes to your behaviors. Your longevity, the length of your life is at stake. Your relationships are at stake. Because if you don't engage in certain relationship building behaviors, your relationships will deteriorate. If your behaviors are toxic to your relationships will deteriorate. So your relationships, such a huge part of being human, is on the line. The degree to which you enjoy your life is on the line. Many people stay at home. They socially withdraw. They don't go outdoors. They don't take a walk. There's no quality of life there because their behaviors are not in check. This is what happens to many people who are depressed. Initially, something happens in their lives that drops their mood, lowers it. But what keeps their mood low is not engaging in the behaviors they used to engage in. They stop working out. They stop eating healthy. They stop socially connecting. They stop getting out of the house. And all of these things, the social withdrawal, the lack of health-related behaviors, all of these things make them feel lower. Not getting sunlight, that makes you feel lower over time. And so you need to think about in your own life, am I engaging in the behaviors that will move me toward the kind of life I want? If you're able to do that, that's when you're an effective leader. Lao Tzu once put it this way: he who controls others is powerful, but he who controls himself is mightier still. Jim Rohn put it this way, that discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment. So if you have the vision, you've got the goal, you've got the endpoint, but to actually accomplish that, to move toward it, you need the behavioral control. So here's a tool from therapy that can help you to better influence your behavior in the direction of your vision so that you can be a more effective self-leader and be someone who inspires others to follow them. The tool is called behavioral friction. So basically, there's this idea in psychology that whenever we engage in a behavior, it's because there was not much friction to engaging in that behavior. For example, if I were to eat takeout, I'm more likely to eat takeout when there are delivery vehicles in my area, when there are many restaurants in my area, when I have the money to be able to afford it, when I have a cell phone that has the apps already downloaded onto it. And so if you're trying to stop a behavior that's not helpful for your end goal and for the kind of life that you want, you should add some friction to that behavior so that you're less likely to engage in that behavior. An example is with fast food delivery services, uninstall the apps. Now, you could just reinstall them, but reinstalling it takes time. It takes effort. You have to consciously do that to be able to order the food. And that's where the friction is. It creates a bit of friction. It slows the behavior down a bit, which makes it less likely that you'll engage in the behavior. Another example is if you're driving home from work and you know that on the way home you usually get takeout, you should think about routes that don't have a McDonald's on the way or some other fast food chain restaurant, because if you take a route that does not have that, then you're less likely to engage in that behavior. In other words, you've just added a bit of friction because now you have to drive out of your way to go get the food. Now, behavioral friction is not just about adding friction to the behaviors we don't want. It's also about reducing friction to the behaviors that we do want. So if I continue with this example, in my own life, I've wanted to eat more fruits and vegetables. And so I've made sure that they were stocked in the fridge and in the freezer and in the fruit bowl. And that reduced friction because it was easier to eat this fruit. And what helped me a lot more is that I moved the fruit bowl from the corner of the kitchen where it was hard to reach to the table in front of me where I would oftentimes sit. I put it right where I would usually sit, and that caused me to grab the fruit a bit more. Something that also helped me is falling asleep in my gym clothes. That was really, really helpful because in the morning, I didn't also have to get dressed and find clothes to wear. So I reduced friction to getting to the gym. This is something you can do regardless of the goal that you have, whether it's academic or occupational, or whether it's a social goal or a health-related goal like mine was. You are able to reduce friction to the behaviors that you want to engage in and enhance friction for the behaviors that you're trying to move away from. So those are the two main things that you need to work on to be an effective self-leader. You need to know where you're going, and you need to encourage the behaviors that help you get there. Now, here's a pro tip before we end. There are many reasons why we don't engage in the behaviors that we know we should be doing. So the problem is not that we don't know what to do. The problem is how to engage in those behaviors. And oftentimes, what stops us from engaging in certain behaviors is our internal world, what's going on mentally and psychologically for ourselves. Sometimes it's an emotion, sometimes it's a thought, it's a belief, sometimes it's a lack of motivation, a lack of discipline. So in other words, there are many psychological constructs that are extremely consequential for whether we will live the kind of life that we want or not. If you're interested in evidence-based ways to transform your psychology, I've created an online membership that you can look into. I'll leave the link in the video description. So if you want to take this to the next level, if you want to make those behaviors that you're trying to engage in a lot easier through this transformation of your own psychology, you can click on the link in the video description, check out that membership, and see if it's something that could help you. If not, good luck with your self-leadership journey, and I hope that this video has provided value in becoming a more effective self-leader so that you can lead others to a better future.